The snow fell like judgment from heaven as Mary Catherine Harper clutched her newborn twins against her chest. The wooden door of Millbrook's only inn slammed shut behind her, echoing through the Ohio Valley like a gunshot. Mrs. Henderson's final words rang in her ears. "We harbor no fallen women here." The November wind of 1793 cut through her threadbare shawl. Sarah, barely 3 hours old, let out a thin wail. Her brother Thomas stirred weakly, tiny fists clenched against the cold, seeping through thin blankets. "Hush now, my darlings," Mary whispered, her breath forming white clouds. "Mama will find us somewhere warm." But as she stood on Millbrook's main street, watching curtains close in windows where candlelight had offered hope, Mary knew the truth. Reverend Morrison's Sunday sermon about sin had branded her more thoroughly than any scarlet letter. Mary. "Harper!" Mayor Thompson's voice cracked across the snow-muffled street. "You were warned to leave this settlement. Your presence corrupts our moral fiber." Mary's legs trembled from cold and fear. "Please, sir. The children need shelter just for tonight." "Those bastards," Thompson spat, "are no concern of decent folk. You made your choice. Now face the consequences." Behind him stood people Mary had known her entire life. The baker's wife, who had once praised her needlework, the cooper who had courted her before James Fletcher's arrival. Now their faces bore only condemnation. "She'll corrupt our daughters," whispered Mrs. Baker. Mary's knees nearly buckled as the truth crashed over her. There would be no mercy here. No Christian charity for a woman who had fallen from grace. "Then I shall trouble you no more," Mary said, lifting her chin with what dignity remained. "May God forgive you for turning away the innocent." She turned toward the forest bordering Millbrook's eastern edge. Each step took her further from civilization, further from hope. The snow crunched beneath her worn boots, and with each footfall she felt the weight of her children's futures pressing down. The tree line loomed ahead, dark and forbidding. Beyond lay wilderness stretching toward the Ohio River, where few white settlers dared venture without armed escort. But what choice remained? Better to die with dignity than grovel for scraps. As towering oaks enveloped her in shadow, Mary allowed one final glance at Millbrook. Smoke rose from a dozen chimneys against the darkening sky. Somewhere behind those walls, families gathered. Around hearths, mothers sang lullabies to babies who would wake tomorrow in safety. Her own babies had grown quiet, their strength sapped by cold. Mary pressed them closer, sharing what little warmth remained. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so very sorry." The snow fell harder now, blanketing the world in deceptive beauty. Mary stumbled forward, following a deer trail deeper into wilderness. Her vision blurred. Whether from tears or exhaustion, she couldn't tell. The cold had begun stealing feeling from her fingers and toes, and she knew with terrible certainty that she was dying. Perhaps it was better this way. The children would not suffer long, and she would not live to see them starve. At least in death, they would be together, away from cruel judgment. A root caught her foot, and Mary stumbled, nearly dropping her precious burden. She caught herself against an oak tree, its bark rough against her palm. Looking up through bare branches, she could see the first stars emerging in the purple sky. "Please," she whispered to whatever power might be listening. "If not for me, then for them. They have done no wrong." Her prayer disappeared into the vast silence, swallowed by snow and darkness. Mary pushed away from the tree and continued forward, her steps growing unsteady. The trail descended toward running water, a creek perhaps, where she might find shelter for their final hours. The sound grew louder, and gradually trees thinned, to reveal a small clearing beside a swift-flowing stream not yet surrendered to winter. Mary sank to her knees beside the water, her strength finally abandoning her. The twins had grown ominously quiet, their breathing shallow. She arranged them comfortably in her lap, pulling her shawl around all three in futile attempt to create warmth. The snow continued falling, and Mary closed her eyes, feeling strangely peaceful as cold began stealing pain from her body. At least they were together. But as darkness began claiming her, Mary became aware of a new sound. Footsteps, measured and deliberate, crunching through snow with purpose. Her eyes snapped open, heart hammering with primitive fear. Wild animals did not walk with such intent, and no white man would venture this far into wilderness alone at night. A figure emerged from shadows between trees, tall and broad-shouldered, moving with fluid grace. As he stepped into the clearing, Mary saw her fears confirmed. An Indian warrior, his long black hair adorned with feathers, his face painted with designs she didn't recognize. A tomahawk hung at his side, and he carried a rifle with casual confidence. Mary's breath caught. She had heard the stories, everyone on the frontier had, of settlements burned, families murdered, women and children carried off to fates worse than death. And now, in her moment of greatest weakness, one of those painted devils had found her. But as the warrior approached, something in his movements gave her pause. There was no aggression in his stride, no violence in how he held his weapon. Instead, he moved with careful deliberation, as if approaching a wounded animal that might bolt. When he was 10 feet away, he stopped and studied her with dark eyes that seemed to reflect starlight. For a long moment they regarded each other, the dying white woman with her illegitimate children, and the Shawnee warrior who had found them. Then, to Mary's amazement, the warrior set down his rifle and raised his hands, palms open, in a gesture that transcended language. "Peace. Cold," he said in accented English, his voice deep and surprisingly gentle. "Baby's cold." Mary could only stare as he approached slowly, movements careful and unthreatening. When he knelt beside her, she caught the scent of wood smoke and herbs that clung to his buckskin clothing. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 25, and that war paint could not entirely mask an expression of profound sadness. Without asking permission, he reached out and gently touched Sarah's tiny hand. The baby's skin was frighteningly pale, her breathing almost imperceptible. "Dying," the warrior said, his voice heavy with understanding. Then, meeting Mary's eyes with surprising intensity, he added, "Not tonight. Not while Black Wolf draws breath." Black Wolf moved with practiced efficiency. From a leather pouch at his waist, he produced dried herbs which he chewed briefly before spitting the mixture into his palm. The pungent smell filled Mary's nostrils as he gently rubbed the concoction on the baby's lips. "Medicine," he explained, dark eyes never leaving her face. "Make warm inside." Mary watched as Thomas's lips began moving weakly, instinctively seeking nourishment. Within moments, both twins seemed to stir with more vigor, their breathing deeper and regular. Black Wolf disappeared into the tree line with movements so silent she might have imagined him. Within minutes, he returned carrying dried branches and a rolled bundle of furs. He worked quickly, clearing snow and arranging branches with skill of a man who had built countless fires in harsh conditions. First sparks caught immediately. Soon, a small but efficient fire crackled to life, throwing dancing shadows across the clearing and promising blessed warmth. Black Wolf unrolled the fur bundle, revealing a buffalo hide lined with softer pelts. "Come," he said, gesturing toward the fire. "Bring little ones." Mary's legs shook as she attempted to rise, her body stiff from cold and birth trauma. Black Wolf was beside her instantly, strong hands supporting her elbow. His touch was gentle but firm, and Mary found herself leaning on his strength despite every instinct that screamed danger. He guided her to the fur-lined hide and helped her settle beside the fire with the twins. The warmth felt like heaven against her frozen skin, and she couldn't suppress a small sob of relief. Black Wolf produced a small pot and filled it with creek water, suspending it over the fire using a tripod of sticks. As it heated, he constructed a lean-to shelter using pine boughs and oiled cloth. "You are hurt," he observed, glancing at bloodstains on her dress marking the difficult birth. Mary's cheeks burned with embarrassment. The babies came quickly. There was no time to. "Birth is sacred," Black Wolf interrupted, his tone carrying no judgment. "Life from life. Nothing shameful in bringing life to world." His words struck Mary like a physical blow. When was the last time someone had spoken to her without condemnation? When had anyone suggested that her children's existence was anything other than proof of moral failing? You were watching, she said as understanding dawned. You saw what happened. In the town. Black Wolf nodded gravely as he added medicinal roots to the boiling water. Black Wolf sees white woman cast out like wounded animal. Sees small lives that will die for sins they did not commit. He ladled. 3 winters passed. Black Wolf had woman. Had son. He stared into flames as if seeing faces there. White sickness came. Fever that burns like fire inside. She died first. Then boy. Then Black Wolf's heart died too. Mary felt tears spring to her eyes. I'm so sorry. Black Wolf understand? He continued, his English becoming more halting as emotion deepened. Understand what it is to watch helpless as life slips away. Understand what it is to be alone when world turns cold. He looked directly at her then, and Mary saw in his dark eyes a pain that mirrored her own, the devastation of loss, the crushing weight of isolation. When Black Wolf sees woman with babies, sees same look, same fear, same hopeless. But baby's not dead. Still time to save. Your people, Mary said carefully. Will they accept us? Black Wolf's expression grew troubled. Some will say Black. Wolf is fool to help enemy. But Black Wolf remembers what his grandmother taught. She say when Creator sends helpless to your path, you help or your spirit grows small and mean. The twins stirred in Mary's arms, and she looked down to see their eyes open for the first time since birth. Bright and alert, no longer dulled by cold and hunger. They need food, Mary said. I don't know if I can. White woman lost much blood, Black Wolf observed. Body needs time to make milk. Black Wolf knows woman in village who lost baby at same time. Has milk but no child to feed. The implications hit Mary like cold water. He was talking about taking her to his village among his people, where she would be utterly dependent on the goodwill of those who had every reason to hate her. They won't welcome us, she said. No, Black Wolf agreed. They will not. But Chief, Tecumseh teaches that strength comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves. He knelt beside her again. White woman has choice. Stay here. Die with babies before sun rises. Or come with Black Wolf. Live with uncertainty but live. Mary looked down at Thomas and Sarah, their faces peaceful now in the fire's warmth. They deserved a chance at life regardless of birth circumstances. My name is Mary, she said quietly. Mary Catherine Harper. Mary Catherine, Black Wolf repeated, the syllables unfamiliar. Is good name, strong name. And if I come with you, what? Then, Black Wolf fed another branch to the fire. Then Black Wolf keeps promise he made to Creator tonight. Keeps Mary Catherine and babies safe until they can stand strong alone. Promise? Mary asked. When Black Wolf saw you dying, he prayed. Asked Creator to give him strength to save innocent lives. In return, Black Wolf swears to be father to children, husband to woman who has no husband, protector to those who need protecting. He met her eyes steadily. His sacred vow cannot be broken. Mary's breath caught. In the space of hours, she had gone from facing death to receiving an offer of marriage from a man whose people were sworn enemies of her own. You don't know me, she whispered. I am a fallen woman. My own people cast me out. White people cast out for what? Black Wolf asked. For creating life? For loving someone who did not have courage to stay? He shook his head. Shawnee judged by actions, not by mistakes of heart. Mary Catherine saved babies when she could have. Gotten rid of burden. Shows strong spirit. The fire popped, sending sparks into darkness. Somewhere in the distance a wolf howled, a wild, lonely sound that echoed the isolation Mary had felt for months. If I accept, she said carefully, what would be expected of me? Learn Shawnee ways, learn language, help women with work, raise children to understand both worlds, white and Shawnee. Be wife in truth, not just in name. And if your people refuse to accept us? Black Wolf's jaw tightened. Then Black Wolf takes Mary Catherine and babies away from village, lives apart, builds new life where Creator guides. His voice carried absolute certainty. Promise is promise. Black Wolf does not break sacred vows. Mary closed her eyes, feeling the weight of decision pressing down. Everything logical screamed that this was madness, but reason had already failed her. Reason had left her dying in snow while respectable people turned their backs on innocent children. "My children," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "If something happens to me, will you truly care for them as your own?" Black Wolf swears, "By sacred fire and Creator's sky," he replied solemnly. "Thomas and Sarah will know no difference between Black Wolf's love and Father's love." He knew their names, Mary realized. Thomas and Sarah. No longer bastards to be despised, but children with a protector who would die before letting harm come to them. "Then I accept," Mary whispered. "I accept your offer, your protection, and your sacred vow." Black Wolf nodded, gravely, then reached into his pouches and withdrew a small object. A cord of woven grass braided with feathers and carved bone beads. "Marriage cord," he explained, tying it gently around Mary's wrist. "Shows all people that Mary Catrin is under protection of Black Wolf." The cord felt strange against her skin, rough and primitive compared to silk gloves of her former life. But it also felt secure, like an anchor in a storm she had been weathering alone. Both babies began to fuss, hungry and needing attention. Black Wolf immediately rose and began packing their makeshift camp. "We go now," he said. "Reach village before dawn, before questions can be asked." Mary struggled to her feet, still weak but determined. As Black Wolf helped her arrange the babies in a sling he fashioned from soft doeskin, she caught sight of her reflection in the dark creek water. The woman looking back was a stranger, hair wild, clothes stained, eyes hollow with exhaustion. But there was something else in that reflection now, something that had been missing for months. Hope. "Ready?" Black Wolf asked, shouldering his pack. Mary looked once more toward the east, where Millbrook's lights had long since disappeared. Everything she had ever known lay in that direction. But the future lay to the west with this unlikely protector who had appeared when all seemed lost. "I'm ready," she said, and meant it. Together, they disappeared into the wilderness, leaving behind only cold ashes and footprints that the falling snow would soon erase. The Shawnee village spread along the mad river banks like earthen domes rising from morning mist. Mary's first glimpse of her new home came as dawn painted the sky rose and gold, smoke from dozens of cooking fires creating a hazy canopy over the settlement. "Remember," Black Wolf murmured as they approached. "Mary Catrin is wife now. Head high. Show no fear. Shawnee respect courage." Mary adjusted her grip on the babies, who had slept peacefully through the night-long journey in the rabbit fur-lined carrier Black Wolf had fashioned. The first person to spot them was a young woman, drawing water from the river. She looked up, dark eyes widening as she took in the sight of Black Wolf walking beside a white woman carrying infant children. The water jar slipped from her hands, shattering against stones. Within moments, they had drawn a crowd. Men emerged, from lodges, hands resting on knife hilts. Women gathered their children protectively. Children pointed and whispered in rapid Shawnee, whose tone needed no translation. "Black Wolf." An older man with gray-streaked hair pushed through the gathering crowd. "Black Wolf returns with wife and children." "Wife?" Chief Blackfish's eyes narrowed as he studied Mary, taking in her blood-stained dress, tangled hair, and, most significantly, the white skin that marked her as enemy. "This is White Woman. Where did Black Wolf find White Woman? Cast out by her people, left to die in snow with newborn babies." Black Wolf's voice carried no defensiveness, only simple fact. Black Wolf found them dying, made sacred vow to Creator, to protect. An older woman with steel-gray hair stepped forward, her voice sharp with disapproval as she spoke rapidly in Shawnee. "Bright Moon says White Woman is spy." Blackfish translated grimly. Says whites send women with babies to make us feel pity, learn our weaknesses. Bright Moon speaks from pain. Black Wolf replied carefully. Her sons died fighting white soldiers. But Mary Catrin is not soldier. Is mother protecting children? Nothing more. Then Thomas began to cry. A thin, hungry wail that cut through the arguing voices like a knife. The sound seemed to shift something in the atmosphere. Several women stepped closer, their maternal instincts overriding suspicion, as they looked at the tiny, helpless infant. Baby is hungry, observed a young woman with kind eyes. How long since born? Yesterday, Mary answered in a voice hoarse with exhaustion. The young woman's expression softened. I am Little Turtle, she said. I have milk. Lost my own baby. 2 moons ago. Little Turtle offers to feed the babies, Blackfish said after listening to rapid Shawnee. But Village must decide if White Woman can stay. Then Village decides, Black Wolf said firmly. But while Village thinks, babies eat. Sacred vow does not wait for council approval. 3 days, Chief Blackfish announced after consideration. White Woman may stay 3 days while Village considers, then council will decide. Little Turtle's lodge was dim and warm, filled with scents of herbs and wood smoke. The young Shawnee woman moved with quiet efficiency, preparing a bed of soft furs near the fire pit and heating water for tea. Your babies are beautiful, Little Turtle said softly. Strong spirits, they will survive. Thank you, Mary whispered, tears finally spilling over. I know what it is to fear for child's life, Little Turtle said gently, touching her own flat belly with grief. My baby died of fever. Nothing I could do, but your babies live. That is gift. A commotion outside interrupted them. Voices raised in argument, the sound of running feet. What is it? Mary asked, fear tightening her chest. Riders coming from east. White riders. Little Turtle's voice was tense. Black Wolf appeared in the doorway, his face grim. Mary Catrin must hide. White soldiers come. Little Turtle was already moving, lifting a section of the lodge floor to reveal a narrow space beneath. Root cellar, she explained. As Mary settled into the cramped hiding place with her babies, she could hear the thunder of approaching horses. Through the thin wood above, she heard voices, first Shawnee, then English with familiar accents. Her heart nearly stopped as she recognized one speaker. We're looking for a woman, came Mayor Thompson's voice. Mary Harper. She stole supplies from the settlement and fled into the wilderness with 2 infants. Mary pressed her hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. Stole supplies? She had taken nothing but the clothes on her back. White woman not welcome here, she heard Chief Blackfish respond coldly. We tracked her this far, another voice added, Cooper Wilhelm. If you're harboring her, it's an act of war. The debate continued above her while Mary held her children in darkness, praying they would remain quiet. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she heard the thunder of departing horses. When Black Wolf finally helped her emerge, his face was grave. They will return, he said. Cannot wait 3 days if white soldiers patrol nearby. Chief Blackfish appeared in the doorway. White woman brings danger, he said bluntly. Soldiers will return with more men. If they find you here, will mean war. Then send me away, Mary said. I won't let my presence harm your people. There is another way, Black Wolf said quietly. Shawnee village near Miami River, led by Chief Tecumseh. He welcomes those cast, out by both worlds. Dangerous but possible, Blackfish mused. Even Bright Moon, who had been most suspicious, nodded slowly. If white soldiers hunt this woman for wrong reasons, maybe she is not spy. Send them to Tecumseh. Then it is decided, Blackfish announced. Black Wolf will take his family to Tecumseh's village. We'll leave tonight. As evening approached, the village women brought gifts, warm leggings, a fur-lined cloak, soft moccasins. Their generosity overwhelmed Mary. Why help me when you don't know if you can trust me? Mary asked. Because Black Wolf trusts you, replied Grey Dove. And because babies are innocent, no matter what color their skin. As they prepared to depart under cover of darkness, Chief Blackfish spoke formally to Black Wolf. You go with blessing of village. May Creator guide your steps. Mary looked back once at the dim glow of cook fires. For one day and night, she had known safety and acceptance. Now she was venturing once again into the unknown. But this time felt different. This time she was not fleeing in desperation, but moving toward hope. The journey to Tecumseh's village took 4 days through terrain that tested every ounce of Mary's strength. Black Wolf led them along hidden trails through dense forests, across ice-rimmed streams, over ridgelines that offered breathtaking views of the Ohio wilderness. Each night he found shelter in impossible places, hollow trees, overhanging rocks, abandoned camps. Thomas and Sarah proved remarkable travelers, sleeping peacefully in their warm wrappings and waking only to feed. Mary marveled at their resilience. Strong babies, Black Wolf observed, will grow to be strong adults. Creator blessed them with survivor spirits. On the 4th day, they began encountering signs of larger settlement. Well-maintained trails, cleared hunting grounds, the distant sound of axes biting wood. Tecumseh's influence grows strong, Black Wolf explained. Many villages now look to him for leadership, all tribes that refuse to bow to white expansion. As they crested a hill in late afternoon, Mary caught her first glimpse of their destination. Tecumseh's village was larger than the previous settlement, sprawling across a broad valley where the Mad River curved between wooded hills. What struck her most was its diversity. Lodges built in different styles reflecting various tribal traditions, people of clearly mixed heritage working side by side. Over 300 people, Black Wolf confirmed. More arrive each moon. They were spotted by sentries and escorted through the village with dignity rather than suspicion. Mary was struck by the sense of purpose that permeated the settlement. These people moved with confidence of those who had chosen their path. Tecumseh's lodge stood at the village center. As they approached, a woman emerged, tall and stately with prematurely gray hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything. Star Watcher, Black Wolf said respectfully. Black Wolf seeks audience with Chief Tecumseh. Chief Tecumseh expects you, Star Watcher replied in excellent English. Word came from Chalagoutha of warrior traveling with white wife and twin babies. Inside the lodge, Tecumseh himself rose from beside the fire. Mary understood immediately why this man commanded such loyalty. He was perhaps 30 years old, tall and powerfully built, with intelligent, compassionate eyes that were utterly focused. Black Wolf of the Chalagoutha Shawnee, Tecumseh said, his voice carrying natural authority. You are welcome in this place. Your wife and children are welcome also. I am Mary Catherine Harper, she said before Black Wolf could make introductions. And I am grateful for your welcome, Chief Tecumseh. You speak for yourself, Tecumseh observed with approval. Good. I have heard many stories of white women who marry Indian men. Some speak only through their husbands, some speak only of their old life. You do neither. I speak for myself because I learned that no one else will, Mary replied honestly. And I don't wish to return to my old life because it offered nothing but judgment and abandonment. Tecumseh nodded, then gestured for them to sit beside the fire. Tell me your story, he said simply. All of it. Mary began with James Fletcher's promises and abandonment, moved through the mounting judgment in Millbrook, described the horror of birth without assistance, and the cruelty of her final banishment. She spoke of dying in snow with her newborn children and of Black Wolf's miraculous appearance. Tecumseh listened without interruption. When she finished, he was quiet for several minutes, staring into the fire. You chose to live, he said finally. When dying would have been easier, you chose to fight for your children's lives. Any mother would do the same. No, Tecumseh said, firmly. Many mothers surrender when the burden becomes too great. You refuse to give up, even when surrender seemed the only option. He turned to Black Wolf. And you made sacred vow to protect those cast out by their own people. In doing so, you risked everything. Sacred vow cannot be broken, Black Wolf replied simply. Tecumseh leaned back. "This is what I have been trying to build here," he said. "A place where people are judged by their actions, not by accidents of birth. A place where strength comes from unity rather than hatred." "Are we welcome here?" Mary asked directly. "You are more than welcome," Tecumseh replied. "You are exactly what this village needs. Proof that barriers between peoples can be crossed by those with courage and good hearts." "What skills do you bring?" Star Watcher asked. "How will you contribute?" Mary considered carefully. "I helped my father in his medical practice. I know something of healing herbs and treating injuries. I can read and write, and I'm willing to learn Shawnee ways. Healing knowledge is valuable," Star Watcher noted with approval. "Our medicine man grows old. Someone with knowledge of both white and Indian healing methods could serve village well. Most important," Tecumseh added, "is that you understand your children will grow up as Shawnee. They will learn our language, our customs, our way of seeing the world. Can you accept this?" Mary looked down at Thomas and Sarah, sleeping peacefully in their warm wrappings. In Millbrook, they would have grown up as bastards, marked by shame. Here, they would be simply children, valued for their potential. "I can accept it," she said firmly. "I want them to grow up proud of who they are." "Then it is settled," Tecumseh announced. "Black Wolf and his family will be given lodge near the healing center. Mary Catherine will work with our medicine man, while teaching him what she knows." As they prepared to leave Tecumseh's lodge, the great chief spoke once more. "Mary Catherine Harper," he said formally. "When you left your white name behind, what name did you choose for your new life?" Mary blinked in surprise. She hadn't considered taking an Indian name. I hadn't chosen one." "Then I will choose for you," Tecumseh said. "You will be called Running Deer, for like the deer, you fled into wilderness when pursued, but unlike the deer, you turned to fight when your young were threatened." Running Deer. The name felt strange, but somehow appropriate. Mary Catherine. Harper had died in the snow outside Millbrook. Running Deer had been born in the warmth of Black Wolf's protection. "I am honored," she said. Their new lodge was small but well constructed, with sleeping areas separated by hanging furs. Other village women had already provided basic supplies: cooking pots, sleeping furs, even simple toys for when the twins grew large enough to play. "Neighbors help neighbors here," explained Singing Bird, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. "All children are precious to village." As Running Deer settled her babies in their new home, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her here. A week ago, she had been dying in snow, abandoned by her own people and facing certain death. Now she was wife to a respected warrior, mother to children who would grow up free of shame, and a valued member of a community that judged her by her actions. Black Wolf entered carrying firewood, his face showing the satisfaction of a man who has successfully protected his family. "Running Deer is pleased with new home?" he asked, using her Shawnee name naturally. "Very pleased," she replied, settling beside the fire he built, "and grateful beyond words for the sacred vow you made in the forest." "Sacred vow brought Black Wolf greatest treasure," he said, his eyes warm as he watched her nursing Thomas. "Brought family, brought purpose, brought reason to fight for tomorrow." Outside their lodge, the sounds of village life continued: children playing, women preparing evening meals, men discussing the day's hunting. It was the sound of people building a life together, facing an uncertain future with courage and determination. As darkness settled over Tecumseh's village, Running Deer held her children close and felt something she had never expected to experience again: hope. Not just for survival, but for a future where Thomas and Sarah could grow strong and proud, where the barriers between peoples might gradually dissolve, where love and courage could overcome hatred and fear. The journey that had begun in shame and desperation had transformed into something far greater: a new beginning, a second chance, and proof that even in the darkest moments, compassion could triumph over cruelty. In the morning, she would begin learning the complex art of Shawnee healing. She would start the long process of mastering a new language and new customs. She would work to prove herself worthy of the trust she had been given. But tonight, She was simply a mother with her children, safe and warm, and surrounded by people who had chosen to see strength where others had seen only shame. Tonight that was miracle enough. The fire crackled softly, casting dancing shadows on the lodge walls, and Running Deer, formerly Mary Catherine Harper, closed her eyes and offered silent thanks to whatever power had sent Black Wolf into the forest at the moment of her greatest need. Her old life was finished. Her new life had just begun.